Mitch.
Uh-oh. Mitch, you.
There you go. Try it again. Take two.
Take two. Nope. Second
Take
verse,
three?
same as the first. I like Mitch better this way.
Honestly.
Yeah. It's like a breath of fresh air. What fantastic.
Can we just pick apart Mitch's outfit while he's trying to figure this out?
Yeah. Mitch is going hunting later. He's going hunting for rabbits.
Thanksgiving season, eh?
Hey, Mitch, what's going on here?
I don't even know what's happening at this point.
Nice.
Pure technical difficulties.
This is going to be amazing. Oh, whose haircut are we talking about here? Me, I assume? Thank you.
Can you hear me at this point?
Yeah. It's a bit thin, but whatever. It's better than nothing.
We can hear you. Yeah, we lost you.
Mitch, what is going on, dude? What did you do to your system? This is like D-Row level shenanigans. I love it. I love it. Episode 66. It's all going to hell in a handbasket. Uh-oh. He pulled the Grossi. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody.
Presented by Footy Talks, our friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I missed you guys last week. I know you guys held down the fort, though, but, I'm back this week. And we got a lot to talk about on today's episode. Obviously, that Jozy Altidore moment, of course, against CF Montreal once again. That Jonathan Osorio, let's call it a tidbit, that interview that he did was just absolutely
Did you listen to Dwayne and Kevin's podcast yesterday by any chance? Because Kevin works with that reporter on the regular. And he had some real interesting insights into the whole goings on there. I mean, my first inclination was, why the hell did they interview him in the first place? I mean, of all the people to ask for that interview, you have a wonderful Oso story where you caught him in a scrum, I believe it was at a Canadian Classique game, or maybe even a V Cup game. What was it, last season? And you could hear Montreal cheering. And you got maybe 2 words in edgewise out of him because he was just shooting death stares at that locker room. Like,
it seemed that back up. That's
yeah. All right, Mitch, let's go. Testing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we are back.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to me why Oso was the guy that they went to. I mean, he's got his media training, and the first 2 questions he was on automatic pilot, and it was fine. But then when she went in for the kill, there was no, he was gone. But I love everything about that video. I mean, I love the inexplicably low lighting. I've never seen BMO look that dark before. Like, they didn't even bother turning on the floodlights for the Oso interview. Everything about it just felt like a different stadium. It felt like the Big O, to be completely honest. Two memeable moments in one game, and we only got a result. We didn't even get the win. They played, just can't get enough. We didn't even win the game. So what are your thoughts, Mitch, now that we can hear you?
Not sure Mitch can hear us.
Yeah, now I can't hear you guys because my AirPods just exploded, but that's
nice.
fun. Nice. Yeah, gotta love it. And literally everything in my setup broke within the last 2 minutes.
What are you going to do?
What was your question?
I said, what was your opinion on the Oso video? Start there.
I mean, that was pretty hilarious. I mean, I loved it. The running away is an all-time all right, see ya, I'm done. Straight down the tunnel.
I know the look back too. The look back is hilarious. He's just just full of beans. It was really, really good. That yeah.
I also did like that he backed it up, and I mean, he's in the MLS Team of the Week, and also was, one of the best performers for Toronto FC in that game against Montreal. So, that helps it even better that he went out and took that interview and was like, no, and they've done some serious damage to Montreal's playoff hopes here. Montreal is now on the outside looking in, and we'll talk a little bit about this throughout the show, but this is a rough week for Montreal, where they have to travel to Hamilton, play on the turf of Tim Hortons Field in a very important, Canadian Championship semifinal, and then they've got to go to Red Bull Arena and take on the New York Red Bulls, who are really turning it around right now. And that's always a tough place to go play, and also that's a must-win game for them, because that's a team who's in the playoffs and right now, and they need all 3 from that one. So that's gonna be a tricky week to schedule for Montreal. So the fact that Toronto FC took those 2 crucial points off of them at the end, that's damage. That's serious.
Did you mention that Canadian Championship game too?
Pardon?
Did you mention the Canadian Championship?
Yeah. Tomorrow they go to Hamilton. Yeah. I'll be there with probably a parka on, because it went from warm to absolutely horrific outside in 22 minutes. So yeah. I mean, we definitely that's sort of the theme of this episode, boys. I mean, Toronto gets to play spoiler now, and I think they're going to relish it. But it's interesting that Oso got the shout for Team of the Week, because if I'm being honest, and it's here in the rundown. I mean, we'll talk about Josmer in a second, but up until that free kick, I didn't think TFC looked at all like they were going to come out with anything in that game. I thought it was really disjointed. I mean, when you play Michael Bradley as a center back, we've all been through 2018. So it just, it strikes fear in my heart. And, there were a lot of shouts on the socials over the course of the game that this may be the next step for MB4, to commit to being a center back, because he can still spray those passes, and in a 4-man backline, he had the opportunity to almost play as a regista. He was pretty high up on the pitch. But
so is that what happened? They played Michael Bradley as a center back. So that was the first TFC game I've missed this year.
Okay,
I was just away. So talk to me. Give me a rundown of what happened that game.
It was a god-awful mess. It reminded me a lot of Armis's experiments with playing players out of position. I don't think Noble had his best showing. I think he looked a bit lost out there. Bradder's positioning was all over the map. I mean, it reminded me of 2018, when he was ostensibly playing center back, but he would be, in the middle of the park as a number 10 sometimes. So the scoreline flattered us. Being in a position to get that result at the death flattered this TFC team. And I don't know. I mean, somebody can come in and say that's representative of that they actually were playing well, but the eye test, it just looked like a mess. It looked like a shambles, and the first half especially. I mean, once we got pause in. And now I'm blanking. I hope that he didn't start, but I think we subbed him in. Once we had him on the pitch, we looked a bit more organized, but it was still a bit of a festival, if I'm being honest. Mitch, what are your thoughts?
There were definitely some positives. I mean, Schaffelberg continues to be a positive for this team. He probably should have had a couple of goals.
Absolutely. Good point.
Again, and we'll talk about Jaquil a little bit more in the next little bit, but he had a couple very, very nice plays that show, his ability in that game as well. But yeah, we've talked about Jozy a bit. That was the real game changer. I think that was as vintage of a Jozy Altidore performance as we've seen in 2-3 years at this point. It wasn't just the goal. He had 2 or 3 other chances where that cross comes in from Oso in the corner, and he really should have scored on that. Maybe, Prime Jozy scores on that.
Header. I did see that highlight. That he definitely should have.
Yeah, for sure. But he still got into that position. There's another shot that he turns around and again forces a nice save on a Pantomis. So he looked lively and up for it in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And have we gone through the Martin Bailey stats on this yet? Because they definitely are worth.
No, they're great. We haven't. I don't actually have them up. So good on you for bringing them up. Let's go.
Absolutely. Well, the big one is that Altidore has now scored more 90-plus minute goals than any other Toronto FC player in their history.
Amazing.
Seba, who has 6, and Toussaint Ricketts with 5. Good for Toss, honestly.
Those were the only minutes he ever got, right? So
that's true. Yeah, but he sure made them count. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Game winners from Toussaint Ricketts, but. He's also now scored more MLS goals with 11 against CF Montreal than any other Red has scored against any other club. Which again, like, we'll see. Like, I mean, we've had this conversation like 5 times, if not more, this season of this show already. But if this is the swan song for Jozy Altidore, like, a lot of the moments, again, other than maybe that MLS Cup, like the moments you'll remember from Jozy Altidore are all against Montreal, and like that's what you want from your marquee player. That like when you're playing that big rival, he's the guy who shows up, and you know, again, he might have just put the nail in the coffin of their playoff hopes in a season where Toronto FC had no business doing that.
I know. I mean, what's the solution, boys? We invest in a cryogenic freezing device and we keep him on ice just for V Cup and Canadian Classique games. You know what I mean? As long as he's willing to accept a slight pay cut, you know, like pay him what we're paying some of the other boys on the squad. Holy crap! But yeah,
I think, Jeff, let's not even go down the road, because I think all of us here we know what Jozy Altidore is at this point in his career. I think we all agree what the next step should be for Jozy Altidore. But I think in that moment, I think let's appreciate it, because all of us were calling for it. You know, us to find a way to upset CF Montreal, and we did. But let me ask you guys something, since I missed the game. If Altidore doesn't score that 94th minute free kick, what would be your takeaways from that match? What would be your impression of it?
Mitch?
I mean, I think it was a still pretty solid performance from Toronto FC. They had some good chances. Again, it's what it kind of has been for the last little bit, where there's some good things that are coming out of it, but as a whole, the team still, you know, it just looks a little disjointed, not up to you know, the form you'd expect. It's what you'd expect from a team at this point that's running out the clock, I guess, on the season a little bit. They got up for it more certainly than they did for Wednesday's game, but and probably a bunch of recent games, but it's still, I mean, yeah, it still looked like a team kind of running out the clock of the season who was able to, you know, have one moment of magic that, you know, got them that crucial point.
I agree. And the funny thing is,
by crucial point, I mean like crucial point to disrupt Montreal. Obviously, not really a crucial point for Toronto.
We understood you. A crucial point. I mean, yeah, I'd agree with you wholeheartedly. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is I knew that free kick was going in. I mean, it's easy to say after the fact, but when they set up, I was like, this is going in. This is absolutely going in. I haven't been that confident about a TFC set play in a very, very long time. But I was like,
that was their first direct free kick this season, if I'm not mistaken.
That explains it.
That was their first one this season that has gone right into the net from a direct free kick.
Not their only direct free kick. I was going to challenge you on that, but yeah, no, that might have been the only one to go in right off a direct free kick. You may be right. Yeah. It just there was a destiny to it, and if you listen to the playback, the TSN playback, I think that general that was the general consensus. Like if you listen to the call, it felt like destiny. I mean, that's the thing about Josmer, you know, like he's gifted us with so many memeable moments over the course of his career at TFC. And you know, scoring the clutch goal is one thing, but then that look to the bench afterwards. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. He knows what he's doing, right? Like, you know, even last year, which was a horrible season for him, that goal against Club de Foot. Again, you know, the quiet now, everybody quiet now. Another unstoppable moment that will live forever in amongst the TFC faithful. So yeah, all in all, a good result, a needed result after whatever the hell that was with Inter Miami. So yeah.
So let's go a step further here. There's, I think, 4 games left in Toronto FC's season. Is there a way that Jozy Altidore somehow, some way, salvages his place on TFC's roster next season with the last 4 games plus Voyageurs Cup? Is there a way that happens, or is he already, you know, run his course?
Mitch?
Not at that price tag. I mean,
exactly.
I think you know, at this point, it's the old like fool me once, shame on you or whatever.
Yeah.
Like he's the issue is just this has been too many seasons of this, right? Like yeah, there's always this argument. This is especially a hockey thing, right? Because we know hockey players penchant for playing through injuries, but there's a point when you're like, do you take 40% of Steven Stamkos over like 100% of like your replacement fourth line player, right? And at some point it becomes diminishing returns, and it's not with Jozy Altidore. It's like, do you take maybe a striker who might not deliver as many big moments when he's on the field, but one who's available for you for 30 plus games a season? And I think you always do, just because, you know, at that point, you know what you're getting. You can build up consistency, and that's been a big issue for this Toronto FC team over the years. Even if you want to go back to when they were good in 2019, right? Like that MLS Cup run was so disrupted by the fact that they didn't have Jozy Altidore. They didn't have that target man available. If he's available in that final, they win that game. They win that game easily. Because they just, the only thing they're missing in that game, and we've talked about it for years since, is that one guy who could finish all those incredible chances they're creating. So at this point, unfortunately, you know, he could go there. He could put up a hat trick against Pacific and another one in the final. Like at this point, you just have to be realistic with where Jozy is and where the club is going. And, you know, I think he has to leave, unfortunately. And it is unfortunate because, as we've said, so many amazing moments, and we'll remember those forever. But you have to, at some point, you know, memories have to become memories.
Let me add another twist here, and this is our next topic, I guess. What if Sebastian Javenko is returning to BMO Field?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've got too many thoughts. I'm going to explode.
Does that move the needle at all? Does that change anything? What happens there?
Well, okay, I've said it a million times. I don't expect Jozy to be the guy that says it's over, right? He's a professional athlete. He's been for his entire adult life, most of his adolescent life. This is not a guy that I expect, and this is not a knock on Jozy. He's going to play until he falls apart, right? So can we get him on a Spezza special? You know, as says the guy that just watched all 6 episodes of the All or Nothing Maple Leafs. Because
I really like the last episode of that, by the way.
Is he? I've only seen episode 5, up to 5. So you caught me in a lie. Does the whole world blow up in episode 6? Anyway, can we get him on a Spezza deal? Is he willing to come in on a Spezza deal? So, you know, he goes from being the top number 9 to a role player. You know, can Seba ostensibly convince him of that? Do they become the mentors of the group? You know, the older statesman on the team? Is there room in the budget for that? Is Jozy willing to do that? These are all questions that I have. Mm-hmm.
Let's say TFC decide to go down the route and they buy Jozy Altidore out.
Okay.
You give him that money. You get one free buyout in the offseason that doesn't count against your budget. You give him that money, and then you sign him to a cheap contract. So hypothetically, he still gets that money that he's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also gets another additional like $80K on top of that. But he only counts against the $80K against the cap. That could be some manipulation that you do, and you know.
I think the player wants to. Happy. I agree. We'd have to look at Bradley's deal, although he didn't have years left on his contract as like Jozy does. So it's a different structure. I think Jozy wants to retire here. I think the general fan base would love him to retire here. But you know, Mitch is the voice of reason, right? We're not getting our money's worth with Jozy. And to circle back, if he rounds into form now with 4 games left in the season, it's a sick cosmic joke, right? Because then there's 2 months of off season where he's got to round into form again, right? This is not the time for Josmer to gear down. And he may, because that's, you know, the chaos that we're dealing with at present. But we've got the pockets deep enough to do it. It's just a matter of exhaustion, right? Are we rolling the dice on Javi again? Or are we bringing in another big money coach? If so, everything gets pushed aside because we're going to want that guy to have his flag and footprint all over this organization, for better or worse, right? if we're rolling it back on Javi again, then the temptation, how much influence is he going to get for 2022, right? If we're just stacking his roster with mentors and the Sebas and the Jozys, he's going to be a passenger in his first official season in charge, right? And that may not be a bad thing. But I do think everything starts with the decision they make on who's the gaffer next year. I mean, listen, Graham is saying, Mike, it's a beautiful thought, but we need to move on. We can't keep living in 2017. We need to get younger. If they bring Seba back, you have Jozy, Bradley, Seba, Paz, and Ozo in 22 in their 30s, maybe even Mavinga too.
If those guys are on minimum deals, you take those guys 10 times out of 10. It's just the issue with Jozy Altidore is that, his price tag, right?
Is insane and has been for 2 years. Yeah.
And the fact he threw Ozo into that mix, that's some slander, man.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was waiting.
I'll pause too, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Bradley's contract, it's not great at this point, and it's crazy to think that he could have probably warranted another designated player contract at the time that he signed that contract. Because
we are talking about Bradley. Okay.
He took a discount.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And now it's crazy that's kind of become a little bit of a burden. Paz is an interesting shout because he has one more year left on his deal after this one, and it's going to become another question. Like, do you re-sign Alejandro Pozuelo?
Yeah. Well, like you said a bunch of weeks ago, it's the first 6 months. We need to see how he comes out in 2022. We may lose him on a free. But it's about seeing if he can bounce back from what's been an injury-plagued season without committing to anything with the player. So it's going to be an interesting first 6 months. And like I said, we may miss the boat on Pause, but like I was saying with Mitch last week, Mitch and James, I prefer us to be a bit brutal than to keep doling out, because since 2017, it's been a whole lot of over-ambition, Agar Keche, Gregory Vanderveel, contract, weirdo dropping players, Raheem the Dream, Stephen Beitashour. There's been ambition and there's been, overspending in places that I don't like. We're starting to shed ourselves of those weirdo contracts, but we're also still giving them away. I mean, I assume this conversation will eventually get to the salaries that were released. So I don't want to open that box too early, but I want to see the team be a bit more brutal this offseason with respect to dead weight. And if that, that might mean that my boy Patrick Mullins isn't back here next year, but he hasn't scored that. Well, dude, he hasn't scored a goal. He hasn't scored a goal all season, right? Like this is,
2 shots on target.
As much as I like the guy,
that miss against Montreal was
obscene. It was brutal.
He had another one against Montreal. There was one against Miami.
Yeah. He had two on a plate that he needs to score both of those.
Yeah, and it's a catch-22 because if the excuse is, well, he needs his reps, well, he's a backup striker, right? You're not going to get those reps, right? So get us somebody like Toss that gets those goals, getting the garbage minutes. Pardon?
I think everyone knows Patrick Mullins is not worth his price tag. Just quickly before we move on here, I want to address this. I think what you're describing goes against MLS rules. Otherwise, why not do that with all your DPs? I don't believe that it is because you only have one off-season buyout each season that you're allowed to use.
Yeah, they're buying out that contract. It doesn't matter what the name is on the top of the contract. They can,
and the designated player would have to take that pay cut and re-sign with your team. Be willing to do that. Hypothetically, if you're a DP and you're worth that DP tag, then you can just go get another DP contract, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to take that pay cut. So I don't think that's against MLS rules. And if Jozy Altidore sees his good friend Sebastian Jovinko deciding to, come around, join TFC, maybe he's going to be a bit more inclined to, take that payday and then rejoin on a cheaper deal to help out, I guess, the better of the club and have a good time there with Seba. So
yeah, I mean, if you're looking at available money, right? Like, you get rid of Dwyer, Mullins, Gallardo, couple other.
Dwyer's not going anywhere. Dwyer's getting paid the league minimum. That's not.
Yeah. I'm the math
move the needle at all.
Oh well, I mean, 80K is certainly. I wouldn't shy away from 80K, but
Fair,
I'm not.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's just say Gallardo, DeLeon, Mullins. Let's say those three. You're talking about the better part of $1 million, right?
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Omar Gonzalez, who's the
who's at just hovering around $1 million, right? Like that gives us a lot of money to play with. Yeah,
I told Mitch we're going to go through the entire roster before this show and decide who should stay and who should go.
That's amazing. We all decided I like that idea.
Save this for a later show, and now 20 minutes in, that's all we've been talking about.
Because our rundown is like 5 sentences, so we're just and Mitch's mic didn't work, so I'm afraid to talk to him because I don't want to.
Segue us.
Segue us, Mitch.
One thing I did want to say on the Jozy Altidore thing is like there's also the pride aspect you have to think about as well. Like it is a little different. Like I know Michael Bradley has been, everyone gives him so much credit for what he did in terms of, leaving his DP contract and taking it to a TAM contract and being willing to do that for the good of the club. But again, his contract was expired. There's a little bit different when like you get your old contract ripped up because, like the implication there is that you don't deserve that money and that that contract is a burden to the team. And then they come back and they're like, all right, we paid you that money. Now you want to come back with us? Like we know Jozy Altidore has a lot of pride. We know he believes he deserves that money, which he probably does for what he's done in the past, if that makes sense.
Listen, if he's going to be on 3-6, yeah, if he's going to hunker down on 3-6 and Seba comes back on a hometown discount, I rue the stories that'll be written about the ego, right? Like
I hear
you gave him that money. They gave him that money. So you can't begrudge a guy for taking the money, and you can't begrudge a guy for wanting to stick it out and keep that money. Like I know guys at the end of a lot of guys at the end of their careers say they wish they'd left more money on the table and been able to win more, but at the end of the day, he got paid that money. Like you can't begrudge him wanting to keep
not at all. There's no way TFC gets out of this without a buyout, either saying goodbye to him or re-signing him. There's no way TFC gets out of this the paying the man his due.
Let's not forget the club did not exactly treat him great the first part of the season, and we don't know exactly what went on, but they literally put him in Exodus. At this point, if I'm Jozy Altidore, I'm taking every cent I can get from Toronto.
I have a theory on that. My theory on that is that they had offers. They were much lower than they expected they were going to get, so they bet on the horse. And then when Armas and him had their handbags, they erred on the side of Armas because at that point I think there were a lot of snap decisions made where they suddenly went from this is what we want for Jozy to fire sale Jozy, and that affects a person's emotional state. So it almost doubled down Jozy's desire to get what he has coming to him, and I wouldn't fault him for that. You sign a deal in good faith, you finish the deal in good faith. That's how the world works. But yeah,
I agree. Jozy Altidore is entitled to each dollar that he has signed. I think he's going to get each dollar that he's signed. But I think as we all agree, for TFC to kind of move forward and with his best foot forward, the best way to move forward is by buying out Jozy Altidore. Now, whether he
regardless of anything,
that's that's up to him. But I think we can all agree. I think Jozy Altidore knows it. I think everybody knows it at this point that he has not lived up to that contract. So if he's going to get his ego hurt because they decide to buy him out in the final year of his contract because, TFC sucked this year, and a lot of that falls on his shoulders, then at that point you have to bite the bullet there with him and take that hit. If he's going to do it, you do. Upset about it.
You absolutely do. And
no one player is above the club, as we've all agreed on. I think that you know this too. I'm not saying that you're not. You don't know this, but I hear your point. I just don't think that should influence anyone's decision whatsoever.
Yeah, trying to account for Jozy's outburst is a fool's errand, right? Because he'll either have him or he won't. Making business decisions based on the emotional responses of the person at the other end of the table is never a good idea, right? Logic should always prevail. You should take it into account, obviously, but you can't control it. So don't lose any sleep over it. But yeah, I mean, Matt's still on this thing where he's saying, if you buy him out and give him the full year pay, then re-sign him for league minimum. I think, Matt, you're getting stuck on the fact that it's the same person, but I don't think that matters in the cold light of MLS rules, right? Like if you were to buy out Jozy and then sign Nosy, or whatever the case may be, that it would fall into rules. Also, MLS rules are stupid, and Inter Miami has broken them for the past 3 years. So, it may be time for us to start playing fast and loose with rules. We can always say it's some Canadian thing. I mean, I don't understand why MLS clubs in Canada don't use that more often and just say, you wouldn't understand it's Canadian tax law, and then just zoom out of there before anybody gets a word in edgewise.
Alex has an unpopular opinion there.
Let's go, Alex.
Altidore would be, with better management, would be more productive.
That to me is, I mean, what's better management? Guys that coddle him.
I guess not exiling him.
Yeah.
Well, exiling him, I think, was knee jerk. This whole season has been just nutty, and there have been some really suspect decisions by the front office. Exiling him as a sort of last resort in a way to shop him that they hadn't done previously blew up in their faces. Altidore with better management would still be injured all the time, Matt says. And
that's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the issue has necessarily been how they've been lining him up. It's more so that they haven't been able to line him up.
Yep. I mean, that's so eloquently expressed. I don't think we need to say any more on that issue.
All right, Mick, segue us.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, I guess we can look to the future of the club a little bit, and we got a little bit of display on that with 17-year-old Jahkeele Masharuti getting his first 2 MLS starts. And, I mean, I think we finally caught a glimpse of what this kid is about. It was much more confident. It was much more direct. I mean, against Miami, that was probably the only positive was how well he played. He's still not 90 minutes fit, which is something that they need to work on, obviously, because, you need your players to be 90 minutes fit at this point. But
one would assume, yes.
I mean, to be fair, with considering how little he's played this season in any capacity between Toronto FC2 and Toronto FC, that's not that surprising that he's not up to that standard yet. But I liked what we saw. We saw some glimpses of real quality. Again, I was talking about that play against Montreal where he steps over the ball simply so he can get it onto his other foot and deliver across. Like, those are veteran plays right there, and that's what we've always talked about with Jahkeele, is those simple plays that he does so well that put him a step above all of the players his age. And now we're starting to see it against professionals at the full level. So honestly, I think at this point, if he's up for it, you start him every game the rest of the season, because why not?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see what a run of games can do firsthand for a young player, right? This is why we're talking about playing the kids so often, is because you gain that confidence, you gain that game experience. You know when you can take an extra touch, you know when you have to get rid of it quicker. This all comes from being thrown out into a game. You can only learn so much from training, and it's so important that we get our young up and coming stars. Jahkeele, Jaden. Obviously, they were doing a great job of it with Ralph before he went down injured. Noble, all of these guys, they need reps. Yep. And there's no reason why at this point in the season they should not be getting reps. There's zero argument for it that they should not be getting reps. I'm with you, Mitch. I think Jack should start every game the rest of the way if he is up for it. I think, as you point out, with each game that goes by, he's gaining confidence and he looks better and better. He's never going to be the player. I know a lot of people are calling for it. I see it all the time on social media. He is never going to be the player that just beats people on the dribble 1v1. That's not who he is. He's the type of player, if you watch the European game, if you watch, any of the high level games, they play as a team. They play, in unison. There's never one game breaker that dribbles through 2, 3, 4 players. It's all a team game, and he plays that so well. So if you can actually get him at a higher level, I think you're going to see him perform even better, because I just think he is that good in terms of understanding the game and knowing what to do and when. There's little things that he does, as you mentioned there, Mitch, that step over. There's just little things in each game that I've seen that he does so well that if he's playing at a higher level, that's when you're going to appreciate it a little bit more. MLS is a little bit looser of a game where it does allow for a lot of that dynamic 1v1 kind of type of players to really what do you call it? Really highlight themselves.
For Singh Altidore,
but
yeah.
Exactly. It calls for a lot of those types of players to really come out and they become the stars. But the reality is, like, when you move on to higher levels and there's not enough space on the field, it's players like Jaquil that are really gonna, stand out. So I really like what I see from him so far, especially at his age, and I'm excited to see the future with this kid.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think we're hurting his development by making him, getting him the muscle memory of patterns and building chemistry with guys that won't be here next year? Or do you think that
no, because that's part of being a pro. That's a massive part of being a pro, is being able to play with whoever is around you. Like that's huge. That's huge for that. Like you don't,
I mean, we've said, all three of us have said the counter so many times this year. Well, just wait until we get, Yef on the field with this guy or that guy, or wait until, Mullins has this strike partner or that strike partner. I've always felt
we never said anything about Mullins.
I'm using him as an example because I didn't want to just blast Yef, but I'm of the mind that what you just said is much more applicable, right? But it's just a testament to how nuts this season is that we've heard the counter so often as an excuse that I'm even now asking questions just to clarify where the hell we are.
I tweeted this out. There's only been 5 times this season that TFC had all 3 designated players on the pitch at the same time. 5 times this season that has happened. We're now at game like 36 in the year. When you're in a league like MLS, which really relies on your designated players, that's not a good thing. And especially when one of your players is, no offense to him, but Jozy Altidore, man. That's not a recipe for success, and that's been the biggest issue with TFC so far this year. That and the defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the defense has been woeful. Graham asks an interesting question here, and it's one we danced around a lot, and I don't know if we have the answer. Is TFC's training staff that inept where we've seen players consistently injured this season more than others? Or do you think it's just the pains of 2020 and 2021 being away from home? I can't see TFC management keeping this staff for as long as they were that bad at keeping our players healthy. I mean, Mike, maybe a couple months ago you were saying that we've got bias, a homer bias, but all throughout the league the injuries have been up because of the fixture congestion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that would be my first answer to Graham's question, is that you need to view it in the context of the rest of the league, right?
But also, Jeff, like we talked about this show about 2 months ago about how good of a job TFC did for so long about keeping their players healthy. Right, the injury report for a good 2.5 months was like 3 players long, right? And you
all DPs.
Akinola, you can't do anything about. Like that's that's not with the team. It's a freak injury. Ralph Priso, I mean, we all saw what happened there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what are you gonna do there, right? So it's at this point of the season too. Like they're not going to push anybody. Like if someone says they have a knock, then like you take the most abundance of caution. Yes, exactly. Like there's no point risking anything like that. So like it's a combination of a bunch of different things. And we talked about this new sports science department coming in and the new whatever it was, like the new medical staff coming in. And at the beginning of the season, we know the rough start that they got off to. But that being said, like in my opinion, I don't think they've done a horrendous job. And I think it's easy to kind of run away with that narrative just based on who exactly is injured, especially when we just talk about how many times we've seen the DPs on the field together this season. But there's a lot of factors that go into that, right?
Yeah, and I think a factor that we're ignoring is that when you do change regimes, generally speaking, especially if the impression is that the outgoing regime failed, the new regime comes in and does the complete opposite, right? So you can get injuries that way, right? Because you're now undoing what is assumed was a bad training regimen. So there can be a lot of soft. I just think that the temptation to keep scorched earth policy is maybe not the greatest of ideas. And then of course who knows how long these contracts were signed for. I mean, did these guys come in on a 1-year deal, or they come in on a 3-year deal? And in such cases is then you've got to buy out the whole medical staff while you're buying out Jozy. I don't know, but I don't know if anybody else does. So to dumb it down to like injure bad, staff go, I think is it's not giving enough credence to the goings on of the work. And again, I don't know if a full regime change is what we want to do. I don't know if we want. Go ahead, Mike.
Another thing is we haven't been allowed at training. Like media has not been allowed to go to TFC training, so it's not like we can actually sit here and have a insightful discussion about what goes on at training, because the reality is nobody knows because we haven't been allowed back. It's tough. It's tough to sit here and speculate. And as you say, like it's easy to kind of come up with that narrative of, oh, you see injuries, therefore training.
I did it myself for 2 years. I mean, it's too easy. And when something is too easy, that means that you're probably not looking at it in great enough detail, right? And the answer might be really disappointing. Like, well, we hired these guys on a deep discount for 3 years, and therefore, we're stuck for 3 years. Like that might be the reality of it, and it's unfortunate. But I also think that the temptation to throw the baby out with the bathwater, especially with this club coming off these 2 years, is strong. And, I was saying to Molinaro last week, it's insane to me that, having lived through Chris Armas's tenure, that we're so quick to want to do it all over again. Right. Like, we're obsessed with the new and the shiny. And I think that explains this reluctance to embrace, the potential of Seba coming back for a victory lap. That, that's why people are like, Jozy done, right? Like I haven't screamed at I haven't been that happy at a TFC game in a very long time than when Jozy potted that at the end, right? Like that was vintage, like just eat it, fellas, TFC, right? And I do not, and I was thinking about this after the game, right? Like how shitty it would be to say goodbye to Jozy, even if he goes and slums it in Asia for a year to diminishing returns Seba style. I mean, that's the other thing we have to take into account. There's now an example from that 2017 team. There's two, actually. There's Victor and there's Seba, of people that went and chased the money, found it lacking, and then came back, right? Victor to MLS, Seba, we'll see. But that has to play on Jozy's it's not the great white unknown anymore. It's not the great unknown anymore. Sorry to throw a color into there. It's no longer the great unknown. There's precedent for players of his age group chasing that. I mean, at the end of the day, they got paid. So, but also he's about to. So, maybe there's more credence to your idea of Josmer coming back for a victory lap at a reduced Toronto rate than we're giving your service to.
We'll see. I have an interesting Seba story.
Nice.
So I head to the game last weekend. I believe it was against Atlanta United.
Yeah.
So I'm going through the media entrance and at BMO Field. If for those of you who don't know, it's like the Tunnel Club as our post game Twitter Spaces is called. I'm going through the tunnel, and I'm waiting for the elevator. And right across from me, right in front of me, walks, of course, Sebastian Giovinco. And let me tell you, this guy looked more at home than ever. He looked like he owned the place. Like he was walking around like it was his dressing room. I know that the players have all, as I think we've all seen it, the players are interacting with him and everything like that. Like this guy had a glow on his face. I'm telling you that much. So if the rumors are true, if as the report that said today, it's a done deal, like I wouldn't be surprised, because it looked like this guy really wanted to be back here. And and we'll see how this plays out. But if I had to bet, I would say that he's definitely back here next season.
Yeah, and it's going to be such an interesting dichotomy, I guess, because there's just the two opposing fan bases, and we brought up these 2 points on today's show. I mean, there's the half of the fan base that believes the issue with Toronto FC since 2017 is they've hung on too long, and we've talked about Jozy Altidore, Michael Bradley, and a numerous list of players that we feel they've probably hung on to for too long or given too much leeway. So bringing back Sebastian Giovinco certainly doesn't do that. But there's another
those guys.
There's another element of the fan base that believes that everything went wrong when Toronto FC decided to get rid of Jozy Altidore and not reward
Sebastian Giovinco,
yeah, and not reward Sebastian Giovinco for all the work that he did for this club. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see both of those sides of the fan base come against each other. But I actually do think, based on what I've heard, and like Mike has always mentioned with the more casual Toronto FC fans, I think more people fall into that second category where they do feel like Toronto FC did Seba a little bit dirty in after the 2018 season, even with the way things happened and the way he very publicly tried to negotiate with the club, and that was, all of the permutations that happened out of that. But with that being said, yeah, I think most people will be happy to see Sebastian Giovinco back should these reports be true.
Winning MLS Cup was the epochal culmination of our presence on the field. The shenanigans with Seba was the culmination of our shenanigans with the front office, right? Mm-hmm. Because 2018 was the victory lap. Let's give Zav's 300K. Let's get, forget about Steven Beitashour. This guy played in a World Cup final, kind of BS. Seba negotiating publicly, like Seba doesn't do that in Turin. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't do that if he's still at Juve, right? But he saw an opportunity to sort of stretch the envelope with TFC, which was in error. And the elastic snapped back. And so it was really like a dominoes falling, and Seba has to have some accountability for what he did to our club with respect to where we went afterwards. And I think that this is mutually beneficial for both the club and the player to sort of exercise those demons and reset our ambition in a really profound way, because Seba's a talisman for this club. And I do think that there's a lot of bad vibes that having him back in any capacity is going to fix.
But Jeff, MLS Cup final 2019, second in the Supporter Shield race 2020. I know this year has been really bad, but yeah, I don't want to talk about the post Seba era like it's just a complete disaster, because that's not.
No,
it
case. Isn't. Certainly not. It isn't. But there was a lot more. It wasn't. It didn't. I think we can all agree that 2019 and 2020 didn't feel like 2017. 2017 felt like a foregone conclusion off the back of the loss in 2016, right? Like, to a man, that entire team was obsessed with one thing, and that was vindication. It all got a little. The greatest MLS team of all time. Exactly. It all got a little messy after that. And where and when that was introduced, I'm not putting it all on Seba's head. Like, there's a general, that team didn't exhale for 2 years, right? And when they got a chance to and value what they were doing, a lot of different attitudes started to play into it. Bez leaving was a huge blow. I'll say it before and I'll say it again. If we had kowtowed to Seba's demands, I think we'd be in the same situation or possibly worse, because we would have established a precedent where we're paying, overseas prices for a post 30 guy out of obligation. It was a rock and a hard place situation. I don't, I don't think it would have worked. I really don't, because then what's our recruitment about? And what are we doing to the rest of the league? In terms of raising the scale of what a DP is worth. Chris Wondolowski would have crawled out of the woodwork saying, "Well, I want $11 million tax free now."
He might have been worth it, to be honest.
I mean, like in revisionist history, well, absolutely worth it. But no,
I'm saying Wando, but
no, I'm saying Wando too. So we had to make a decision. I think we made the right one. The Josmer decision, like I've said many times, in that context, I would have done it again, regardless of how it shook out. So we now get an opportunity to sort of reset, and kind of revisit some of those bad memories and put them to bed and kind of establish who TFC is in 2022. And I like the fact that Seba is potentially a part of that. And I like it even more if Jozy's a part of that, but he's got to be coming back on a seriously reduced rate that reflects, how many minutes he's going to get. He's not going to start every game, which is fine because he doesn't anymore. He's not going to even be on the bench every game, but in terms of what he brings to the locker room, in terms of what he brings to mentorship, he's worth something. Pay him what we paid Dwyer. Sure. He's worth Dwyer money for sure.
That's league minimum, Jeff. That's like the least you can pay.
Yeah. But I mean, he's been the league minimum in terms of minutes. So, you know, let's have the pay reflect.
No, I don't disagree. I'm just saying that is like the bare minimum you can pay someone.
I know.
Mitch, let's move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's finish up, I think, with a couple of Canadian soccer topics, but one of which you mentioned victory tours there in your rant there, Jeff, and Canada, the women's national team on one right now. They play again tonight at Stade Saputo against New Zealand after thrashing them in the first game. I mean, that was as dominant of a performance as we've seen from this Canadian women's team in a long time, which was a great way to kick off the celebration tour.
Sure was.
With that being said, one of the things I definitely want to talk about with this women's team and something that, you know, obviously you wish they didn't have to do, but super proud of this team for doing it, is the way they've really used their platform during this celebration tour to call for change and to you know, make sure that the next generation of women's players coming up are in a much safer, much more secure, are treated properly in a professional setting in the way that, you know, all of these players and many others haven't been. And, you know, we can call for professional leagues and all that kind of thing, but, you know, it starts at the bottom level. This all has to change. And, you know, it's tough on this team because I know they probably want to go out and just play and celebrate the incredible accomplishment they did, but they know that this is a unique opportunity for them to, you know, not only change the game for the better in terms of how it's played on the field and how it's in, you know, the quality of player, but the quality of treatment for those players. And, you know, I'm honestly really proud of this national team for doing that.
And I'm proud at Canada Soccer for responding. Like the turnaround on their response was minutes. You know what I mean? So doubly proud of that. And if you've read, demands is too strong a word, but if you've read the plan for the future, it very closely mirrors what's going on in the States with the sort of level, the list of sort of things that need to be changed with the NWSL debacle. So it's nice to see some unity across the nations. You know, because you know, the impetus for Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver potentially buying into the NSL has dropped like a Led Zeppelin over the last couple of years or the last couple of weeks, and rightly so. I mean, that league is in some serious trouble. So it's nice to see their platform being used. I mean, this is par for the course with the Canadian women's team. They are really outspoken on social issues. They use their platform for good often. So this is just another example of that, but I do like what they're doing. I mean, you know, our friend of the show, Benedict Rhodes, was there as a fan for the game. So we got to see a lot of little phone snips of what TD Place looked like, all gussied up. There was a certain amount of controversy that has been explained away with respect to how quiet it was, and that there wasn't really a so-called supporter section. And people were throwing blame everywhere, and most of it went to the CSA. But if we're being honest, it was a whole lot of miscommunication all over the place, and not a lot of supporter tickets were sold. So the sections got mixed together, and you know as well as I do from people that come into the South End at BMO without, you know, reading the signs that are on their tickets or posted outside the gates. What's with the flags? Put them down. We want to watch the game, and then it becomes, you know, an argument. So everyone wanted to be in the spirit of celebration. So I can understand why, you know, they sort of said, okay, fine, we're not going to rock the boat. We're not going to wave flags and be noisy. The hope is that Montreal, what I don't understand is, you know, if this was marketing purposes, and I've seen that answer levied a lot, like this is an exercise to market it. Well, that, you know, the supporter section is a camera magnet, right? Like, you know, tell me a broadcast that doesn't go full Mingo into the crazy people, you know, with tarps off, like jumping up and down. It is a camera magnet. So I do feel like it's a missed opportunity when you get these eyeballs on these games and there isn't one there, because it is something that's specific to the beautiful game. And I think it's an essential part of the beautiful game. So I'd like to see that rectified tonight. If I had my druthers, but obviously, I'm on the outside soapboxing looking in. So just seeing them play is reward enough, and just seeing a packed house is reward enough, right?
Yeah,
I lost you both.
I
mean, speaking of packed houses, if I can segue my own segue, Edmonton, man.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Nicely done, Edmonton. They are going to go. They're going to sell out
what I
both
don't
games.
understand too is they're in the middle of a lockdown. Like, I think Alberta's like in a lockdown.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, they're slowly opening up more sections. So, people will post on the internet that it's a sellout because there's no tickets available. But what they're missing is they have to, the group sales for Pee-wee soccer teams, et cetera, those are done on almost a case by case basis. So Ticketmaster has to keep a huge amount of seats open to sell those group tickets. And then when all is said and done and the window for group sales expires, then they open up what's left. So I think
do you know the capacity? Is it full
Commonwealth?
capacity?
It's about well, that's the thing, right? Like, nobody knows, because right now they've sold out the blocks of tickets in the areas that have been opened up, right? But of course they're keeping close to the chest. So people are guessing as to what, like, they're guessing that the whole upper bowl has kind of been closed off for group sales. So I would imagine right now they've sold they've definitely beat what BMO was for Panama. They're definitely over 30K for both games without question.
And I expected that, especially with the noise that the national team has made, right? Like,
so do I.
That historic win against Panama, and they're in the position that they are, especially with huge matches against Mexico and Costa Rica coming up. Like, I think anything short of that would have been underwhelming.
Edmonton comes out. I mean, I didn't know about the Grey Cup that they packed. I didn't know about all the Canadian women's games that they packed. But, big games in Commonwealth selling out aren't necessarily as surprising as it was.
Yeah.
I mean, the speed at which it sold out was pretty mental. The fact that, so often people are like, well, if they just advertised more, they get more butts and seats. There was almost no advertising for this.
Yeah, they delayed
it. Herdman was on a Hockey Night in Canada interstitial, and that was it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, they played an ad at the Oilers Stadium, and he was on a hockey broadcast. This was word of mouth and 50,000 people. So it really does pop that balloon of, the only reason that the national teams aren't packing butts into seats is advertising. I mean, that may be true in Toronto where there's so much to do, but Edmonton's not like a one horse town either. There's a lot to do. And if they're, it just,
well, Jeff, there's what I said earlier was I believe that moving forward, you're not going to be able to get access to this team the way that we've had in the past.
I agree.
And I think this is a combination of a couple of those things. It's A, yes, Edmonton absolutely comes out. B, it's Alphonso Davies' first time playing in Edmonton for the national team, which is
cross your fingers. Cross your fingers, because
it's what this men's national team has done and how far it's come. Is that I believe even when they come back to Toronto, you're not going to be able to get tickets that easy anymore.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful to see. There are people that are going to complain because obviously, but it's a long time coming, and it should be difficult to get tickets to your national teams. I mean, it shouldn't be a cakewalk, right? So. And it's wonderful because this is what I mean about inertia, right? If it becomes this like guaranteed sellout across the country, then the calls for more advertising disappear because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's great to see. It really is. And credit to the Voyagers for really stepping up. Because this is new to them. I mean, not only is it new to them in terms of membership fees, which now give people more of an onus to be disappointed when they don't get access to seats, but in terms of going from, basically having to give tickets away to having to turn paying members away in the span of 6 months is craziness. So credit to them, credit to CanSoc. I mean, just looking at the way that they're dealing with the Commonwealth and Ticketmaster's requirements in order for group sales and that sort of thing, it's been a pretty good rollout. It's going to be really exciting. I'm super jealous that I'm not going to be there, but I don't know if I'm ready for a plane ride at present. I don't think I can do it.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to super give them all the credit, because I mean, the fact they didn't have tickets ready to go the second Alphonso Davies scored that goal, like that just shows how, like we've said, how much momentum there is around this team. Because like,
sure,
in a normal marketing world, like if that's when you want those tickets on sale, and the fact that they like waited a couple weeks and like then announced it is like, yeah,
I don't think that was CanSock. I think that's Health Canada. The fact that we're in an active pandemic, they have to figure out. Mike just said, are they in a lockdown? And the three of us don't know, right? So, at the end of the day, I do think that there's Mike got a split. He said I don't know.
No, I'm saying I think they are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm remiss to throw the blame entirely at the feet of CanSock. There's more than enough blame to go around with respect to why I still don't have an Alicia Chapman jersey in men's sizes. So I'll nail them for that one, as opposed to anybody. Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say, all right, Mitch, take us home.
Yeah. I think we've gotten to the end of this show a little disjointed again, like the team that we've been watching for the last couple of weeks. But I think we had some bright moments of quality in here as well. We had a couple of Jacob Schaffelbergs, so yeah. So at least we got here. Maybe you're into point.
Your last question. Let's end on that. Should the Reds sit guys against Atlanta on Sunday? I say no way.
You don't think they should with Pacific coming up? No.
Oh, good point. Right. Fair point. No, it's only because I read the MLS newsletter and the Atlanta homer that writes it thinks that Toronto's going to beat Atlanta, so I kind of want to make that right. But no, you're right. With Pacific coming up, whatever.
Is that game at BMO Field?
No, it's
Pacific.
It's at.
Oh no, it's at.
It's in Atlanta. So I'm of the mind you roll out the kids.
I agree, but at the same time, like expect a 5-0 game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But the Pacific
against an Atlanta team that's desperate to get points to get in the postseason.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
They're 7th right now, just hanging on. So I guess that'd be kind of sweet because you'd be helping out, or be helping out Atlanta, but you'd be hurting Montreal if you roll out the kid.
There you go.
Kevin Silva as goalie/striker, and let's go. Beautiful.
Yeah, if there's any theme to this show, I think it's the fact it's just how much damage TFC's done to Montreal and how much damage they still could be. You can play spoiler in more ways than one. I think we'll maybe find that out if Toronto go to Atlanta and lay an egg.
5-0. Anyway, and we still get to hear "Just Can't Get Enough," which would be ridiculous.
We'll find a way to blare it, but oh my goodness, the amount of trolling that would cause would be unbelievable. But let's wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thank you to all of us this week for bearing with us and all our technical difficulties and continuing to ask questions. We really appreciated that. A big couple weeks coming up, of course. We got the national team, we got the Canadian Championship, and then the off season. So as much as things feel like they're kind of in a lull right now, certainly they'll get more exciting in the next little bit. But on behalf of Michael Singh, Jeffrey P. Nesker, have a good week, everyone.
Cheers.